My marriage had the stability of a Jenga tower in an earthquake. I should have seen the signs earlier, but when you're busy fixing other people's broken cars all day, you tend to miss the wreckage happening in your own garage. The name's Nate Callahan, and I run Callahan's Auto Body on the south side of town. 37 years old, still got most of my hair, and I can rebuild a transmission with my eyes closed. What I couldn't rebuild was whatever the hell my wife Melissa had turned our relationship into. "You're working late again tonight?" I asked, watching her apply lipstick in the hallway mirror. Red. She never wore red for me anymore. "Trevor needs the Morrison account presentation perfect," she said, not meeting my eyes. "You know how important this is for my career." Trevor Gold, her boss at the PR firm. The guy drove a leased BMW and wore suits that cost more than most people's rent. I'd met him exactly twice, once at the company Christmas party, where he spent the entire time name-dropping clients, and once when he picked Melissa up for some emergency meeting on a Saturday. Right, Trevor. I wiped my hands on a shop rag, leaving grease stains that would never come out. "What time should I expect you?" "Don't wait up." She grabbed her purse, the expensive one I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. "Oh, and Nate? Maybe shower before bed. You smell like motor oil." The door slammed before I could respond. I stood there in our cramped apartment, surrounded by the life we'd built together. IKEA furniture, wedding photos on the mantle, her collection of self-help books stacked on the coffee table. Living your best life, manifesting success, breaking free from toxic patterns. Apparently, I was the toxic pattern. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and settled into my chair. The apartment felt different when she wasn't here. Quieter, but not peaceful. More like the silence before a storm hits. My phone buzzed. Text from Tommy, my best friend and the bartender at Murphy's down the street. "Rough day fixing broken things. Come drink about it." Tommy knew me better than my own wife did. We'd grown up together, played football in high school, and he'd been my best man. While I'd married Melissa and tried to build something stable, Tommy had stayed single and developed an uncanny ability to read people's lies from across a crowded bar. Murphy's was exactly what you'd expect from a neighborhood dive. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and regulars who'd been occupying the same stools since the Clinton administration. Tommy was behind the bar, polishing glasses with practiced efficiency. "Let me guess," he said, sliding a beer across the bar. "Melissa's working late again." "How'd you know?" "Because you've got that look, like someone just told you your dog got hit by a truck, but you're not sure if you should be sad or relieved." I took a long pull from the bottle. "That's a terrible comparison, but accurate." Tommy leaned against the bar. "When's the last time you two did anything together? And I mean actually together, not her posting photos of your dinner while texting someone else." That stung because it was true. Melissa had become obsessed with social media over the past year. Everything had to be documented, curated, presented to the world as evidence of our perfect life. Meanwhile, I was living in the outtakes. "She's ambitious," I said. "The PR world is competitive, so is the auto repair business, but you don't see me working on cars at midnight." I was about to respond when my phone lit up with a notification. Instagram. Melissa had posted a photo of herself at what looked like an upscale restaurant. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to treat yourself when life gets overwhelming. #self-care, #blessed but stressed." "Funny," Tommy said, looking over my shoulder. "That doesn't look like the office." The restaurant was Chez Laurent, the French place downtown where reservations took weeks to get. I'd tried to take her there for our anniversary, but they were booked solid. Apparently, Trevor had better connections. "Maybe it's a business dinner," I said, but the words tasted like lies. "With who?" "Because that table looks set for two, and I don't see any work papers." I scrolled through the comments. Heart emojis from her friends, supportive messages about taking time for yourself, and one comment that made my stomach drop, Crystal_influence. "You deserve so much better, girl. Some people don't appreciate what they have." Crystal was Melissa's best friend and the kind of person who documented every meal, every workout, every profound thought that crossed her mind. She had 30,000 followers who hung on her every word about lifestyle optimization and toxic relationship patterns. Apparently, I was today's topic. "I need another beer," I said. Tommy obliged, but his expression had shifted from casual concern to something more serious. "Nate, when's the last time you looked at her phone?" "I don't snoop on my wife." I'm not talking about snooping. I'm talking about basic awareness. When she's texting during dinner, when she's laughing at messages while you're trying to talk to her, when she takes her phone into the bathroom like it's surgically attached to her hand. I thought about it. Really thought about it. The late nights had started about 6 months ago. The phone behavior had escalated around the same time, and the distance, emotional, physical, conversational, had grown into a canyon I couldn't seem to cross. She says I don't understand her world, I admitted. The pressure, the networking, the way business gets done. Business doesn't get done at Chez Laurent at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text message from Melissa. Meeting running super late. Crashing at Crystal's tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. I showed the message to Tommy, who raised an eyebrow. Interesting, he said. Because Crystal just posted a story from her apartment, and she's alone. Posted it about 10 minutes ago. The pieces started falling into place, but I wasn't ready to assemble the picture yet. Some truths are too big to face all at once. Maybe I should head home, I said. Or maybe you should start paying attention. I left Murphy's with more questions than answers, and a growing certainty that my marriage was in worse shape than I'd realized. The apartment felt even emptier when I got back, and Melissa's absence seemed to echo off the walls. I sat on the couch and stared at her Instagram post again. The photo showed her smiling at the camera, wine glass raised in a toast. But if you looked closely, and I was definitely looking closely now, you could see the reflection in the window behind her. Another person at the table, someone in a suit. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Nate Callahan? A woman's voice, nervous. Yeah, who's this? My name is Linda Gold. I think we need to talk. Linda Gold turned out to be Trevor's wife, and she had a story to tell. We met the next morning at a coffee shop across town, far from anywhere Melissa or her crowd might show up. Linda was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of tired eyes that come from not sleeping well for months. I found your number in Trevor's phone, she said, stirring her coffee with mechanical precision. Listed under Melissa's husband. Not your name, just your relationship status. How long have you known? I asked. About 6 weeks, maybe longer, if I'm being honest with myself. She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots, text messages, credit card statements, hotel receipts. He's not very good at covering his tracks. The evidence was damning and thorough. Late-night texts that had nothing to do with work, charges at restaurants I'd never been to, a hotel room booked for last Tuesday, the same night Melissa had supposedly crashed at Crystal's. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because I'm tired of being the only one who knows the truth. Linda's voice cracked slightly. And because I think they're planning something. She showed me more screenshots. Messages between Trevor and Melissa discussing exit strategies and making clean breaks. There was talk about Melissa's social media following, how she could spin a divorce narrative that would be sympathetic to her audience. She's been building a case against you online, Linda explained. Subtle at first, but it's escalating. Posts about feeling unappreciated, hints about emotional neglect, comments about how hard it is when your partner doesn't support your dreams. I thought about Melissa's recent posts, the carefully crafted messages about self-care and personal growth, the photos that showed her living her best life while I was conspicuously absent. She wasn't just cheating, she was building a public narrative that would make me the villain in our story. What do you want from me? I asked. I want them to face consequences, Linda said. Real ones, not just a quiet divorce where they get to ride off into the sunset while we pick up the pieces. We exchanged contact information and agreed to stay in touch. Linda had access to Trevor's communications, and I had intimate knowledge of Melissa's patterns and weaknesses. It wasn't exactly a partnership I'd ever imagined forming, but desperate times call for creative alliances. I spent the rest of the morning at the shop, trying to focus on work while my mind raced through possibilities. Around noon, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Melissa had posted again. This time it was a long, emotional caption about recognizing when you've outgrown a relationship and having the courage to prioritize your own happiness. The photo showed her at what looked like a spa, cucumber slices over her eyes, the picture of serene self-care. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. Friends and strangers alike encouraged her to do what's best for you and never settle for less than you deserve. A few people asked if everything was okay at home. Melissa's response was masterful in its ambiguity. Some people grow together, others grow apart. I'm focusing on my own journey right now. My phone rang. It was my mother. Nathan, what's going on with you and Melissa? What do you mean, Ma? I mean, her social media posts are starting to sound like divorce papers. Are you two having problems? I looked around the shop, my domain, the place where I fixed things that were broken and made them work again. If only marriages came with repair manuals. We're going through a rough patch, I said. Well, whatever's happening, you might want to tell your side of the story. Because right now, she's controlling the narrative, and it doesn't make you look good. After hanging up, I realized my mother was right. Melissa had been playing a longer game than I'd understood. While I'd been focused on the day-to-day reality of our relationship, she'd been crafting a public version that positioned her as the victim and me as the obstacle to her happiness. That afternoon, Linda texted me screenshots of new messages between Trevor and Melissa. They were planning to go public with their relationship after Melissa filed for divorce. There was discussion about timing, about how to present their love story as something that developed after her marriage ended, not before. We need to move fast, Linda's text read. They're planning to file papers next week. I spent the evening going through our shared social media accounts, our photos, our digital life together. Melissa had been methodically editing our story, deleting pictures where we looked happy together, keeping only the ones where she appeared to be carrying the relationship alone. But she'd made mistakes. Screenshots could be recovered. Deleted posts left traces. And I had something she didn't expect. Allies who'd been watching her performance with growing skepticism. Tommy had noticed the changes in her posts. My mother had picked up on the subtle implications. Even some of Melissa's own friends had started asking questions about why her husband never appeared in her carefully curated life anymore. The next morning, I decided to take action. I started with a simple Facebook post. No dramatic accusations, no emotional outbursts, just a straightforward statement. Some of you have been asking about Melissa's recent posts. I want you to know that I've been committed to working on our marriage, even when it's been difficult. I believe in fighting for the people you love, not giving up when things get complicated. I hope we can find our way back to each other. The response was immediate and revealing. Friends and family members who'd been watching Melissa's narrative with confusion suddenly had context. The comments were supportive, but more importantly, they shifted the conversation. Melissa called within an hour. What the hell do you think you're doing? She demanded. I'm telling the truth, I said. Something you might want to try. You're embarrassing me. Take it down. No. There was a long pause. I could hear traffic in the background, which meant she wasn't at the office like she'd claimed. We need to talk, she said finally. I agree. When and where? Tonight, after work, at home. What time should I expect you? Your real schedule, not the fictional one. Another pause. 8 o'clock. She hung up without saying goodbye. I spent the rest of the day preparing for a conversation that would either save our marriage or end it. Based on the evidence Linda had shared, I was pretty sure which way it would go. But I wasn't going into that conversation blind anymore. I had screenshots, witness statements, and a growing network of people who'd started to see through Melissa's carefully constructed narrative. The game had changed, and for the first time in months, I wasn't playing defense. Melissa didn't come home at 8. She didn't come home at 9, either. At 10:30, she finally walked through the door, and she wasn't alone. Trevor Gold stood behind her in the hallway, his expensive suit wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. They both looked like they'd been caught in a rainstorm, though the evening had been clear. We need to talk, Melissa said, as if she hadn't kept me waiting for 2.5 hours. All three of us? I asked, looking at Trevor. Trevor's here for support, Melissa said. This conversation affects him too. Oh, I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd brought her lover to our apartment for a conversation about our marriage, and she was presenting it as a reasonable decision. How thoughtful, I said. Should I call Linda? Since we're including affected parties. Trevor went pale. Who's Linda? Your wife, I said. Remember her? Blonde, about 5'6", married to you for 8 years? Melissa shot Trevor a look that could have melted steel. Apparently, he hadn't mentioned that his spouse was also aware of their situation. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Melissa said, her voice rising. You're vindictive, Nate. You can't handle adult conversations without trying to hurt people. Adult conversations, I repeated. Is that what we're calling this? I pulled out my phone and started reading from Linda's screenshots. Tuesday, 11:47 p.m. Can't wait to be done with this charade. Wednesday, 2:15 p.m. He's so clueless, it's almost sad. Thursday, 9:22 a.m. After the divorce, we can finally be public about us. Trevor looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Melissa's face cycled through several expressions before settling on defiant anger. You had no right to invade my privacy, she said. I didn't. Your boyfriend's wife did. Turns out, she's not as clueless as you thought. The next 20 minutes were a masterclass in deflection and blame shifting. According to Melissa, our marriage had been over for months. I was emotionally unavailable, unsupportive of her career, and incapable of understanding her needs. Trevor was just a friend who'd helped her realize what she was missing. You work with your hands, she said, gesturing around our modest apartment. You don't understand the intellectual and emotional connection Trevor and I share. Right, I said. Very intellectual. Especially the part where you've been planning to take half my assets while building a social media case that I'm a terrible husband. That stopped her mid-sentence. I've seen the posts, Melissa, the carefully crafted narrative about outgrowing relationships and prioritizing self-care. You've been building a divorce strategy for months. Trevor finally spoke up. Look, this doesn't have to be hostile. We can handle this like adults. Adults, I said. There's that word again. Adults don't sneak around for months. Adults don't lie to their spouses while planning their exit strategy. Adults don't bring their lover to marital counseling sessions. This isn't counseling, Melissa snapped. No, it's not. It's a performance. You wanted witnesses for whatever story you're planning to tell next. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, our neighborhood looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Same houses, same streetlights, same parked cars. But inside our apartment, everything had changed irrevocably. I want you both to leave, I said. This is my apartment too, Melissa protested. Then I'll leave. But this conversation is over. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. As I passed Trevor, he had the nerve to put his hand on my shoulder. Nate, maybe we can work something out that's fair for everyone. I looked at his hand, then at his face. Take your hand off me. He did, quickly. And Trevor, your wife wants to meet with you tomorrow. Something about discussing your shared assets before you make any major life decisions. I left them standing in my living room and drove to Murphy's. Tommy took one look at my face and poured a double whiskey without being asked. That bad? He said. Worse. She brought him to the apartment. Jesus, that's bold, even for her. I told Tommy about the evening's events, about Linda's evidence, about the months of careful manipulation I was only now beginning to understand. So what's your next move? Tommy asked. I'm not sure. Part of me wants to just let them have each other and walk away clean. And the other part? I thought about Melissa's social media campaign, about the way she'd systematically rewritten our relationship to make herself the victim. I thought about Trevor's smug assumption that he could work out a deal that was fair for everyone. The other part wants them to face consequences for what they've done. Tommy nodded. I can respect that. What kind of consequences? I don't know yet, but I'm tired of being the only honest person in this situation. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. This is Linda. They're at Trevor's condo. I have photos if you need them. I showed the message to Tommy. Your new partner in crime? He asked. Something like that. The photos Linda sent were damning. Melissa and Trevor on his balcony, sharing a bottle of wine, completely comfortable in their intimacy. No pretense of this being a new relationship or a supportive friendship. They looked like they'd been together for months. I'm going to destroy them, I said. Tommy raised his glass. Then let's make sure you do it right. We spent the next hour planning. Not violence, not illegal activity, just strategic exposure of the truth. If Melissa wanted to play games with public narrative, I was ready to show her how that game could be played by someone with nothing left to lose. The war for the truth was about to begin, and I finally had ammunition. The next morning, I woke up with clarity I hadn't felt in months. Melissa had spent the night elsewhere, probably at Trevor's condo, and our apartment felt like mine again. I made coffee, read the news, and planned my day like a general preparing for battle. Step 1 was documentation. I went through our shared accounts, our lease, our financial records. Everything I'd need to protect myself legally was already in order, but I wanted to understand exactly what Melissa thought she was entitled to. The answer was everything. I found a folder on her laptop. She'd forgotten to log out of her cloud account, labeled Divorce Planning. Inside were screenshots of our bank statements, research on asset division laws, and a detailed timeline of our relationship that painted me as increasingly controlling and unsupportive over the past year. But the most interesting document was a draft Instagram post, apparently scheduled for later in the week. After much soul-searching, I've made the difficult decision to end my marriage. This isn't about blame or anger. It's about recognizing when two people have grown in different directions. I'm grateful for the good times we shared, but I deserve a partner who supports my dreams and values my ambitions. Thank you all for your love and support during this challenging time. #new beginnings, #self-love, #courage to change. The comments were already written by her friends, ready to copy and paste when the post went live. A coordinated social media campaign designed to control the narrative before I even knew I was getting divorced. I screenshot everything and sent copies to Linda. Her response was immediate. Trevor has a similar folder. They've been planning this for months. By noon, I had a complete picture of their strategy. Melissa would file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, specifically my failure to support her career growth. Trevor would wait a respectful amount of time before going public with their relationship. Maybe 6 weeks? They'd present their love story as something that developed after both their marriages ended, not before. It was a solid plan, except for one problem. They'd underestimated their spouses. Linda and I met again that afternoon, this time at a restaurant downtown. She brought printed copies of Trevor's communications, including some I hadn't seen before. "Look at this one," she said, sliding a paper across the table. It was a text from Trevor to Melissa, dated 3 weeks ago. "Linda suspects something, but she's too weak to do anything about it. She'll take whatever settlement I offer and disappear quietly." And this one, Linda continued, showing me another message. From Melissa to Trevor. "Nate's too proud to fight dirty. He'll be hurt, but he won't try to destroy us publicly." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. They really don't know us at all, do they? Not even a little bit. We spent the next hour developing our counter strategy. Linda had access to Trevor's financial records, which showed he was living far beyond his means. The expensive car, the upscale condo, the lavish dinners, all funded by credit cards and loans he couldn't actually afford. His PR firm was struggling, and his personal debt was staggering. Meanwhile, I had documentation of Melissa's months-long deception campaign, including her plans to manipulate social media sentiment before filing for divorce. "We need to move before they do," Linda said. "Once she files and controls the initial narrative, it'll be harder to expose the truth." "What do you have in mind?" "Trevor's company is having their annual client appreciation event tomorrow night. Big party, all their major accounts will be there, lots of social media coverage." I could see where this was going. And what if some embarrassing truths about Trevor's personal life became public at exactly the wrong moment? We refined the plan over the next hour. Nothing illegal, nothing violent, just strategic truth-telling at maximum impact moments. That evening, I posted a new update on social media. I've been thinking a lot about honesty lately, how it's the foundation of any real relationship, and how its absence can poison everything you've built together. I believe people deserve to know the truth about the important things, even when that truth is uncomfortable, especially then. The post was deliberately vague, but it served its purpose. Friends and family started asking questions, and Melissa's carefully constructed narrative began to show cracks. She called within an hour. "What are you trying to do?" she demanded. "I'm being honest about our situation," I said. "Something you might want to try. If you're planning to make this ugly, Nate, you'll regret it." "It's already ugly, Melissa. I'm just tired of pretending it isn't. I'm filing papers on Monday." I figured. "Trevor's event should be fun tomorrow night." There was a long pause. "What do you know about Trevor's event?" "Ugh, enough." She hung up, but I could hear the worry in her voice. For the first time since this whole mess started, Melissa wasn't controlling the conversation. I spent the evening preparing for tomorrow night's revelation. Linda had gotten me a copy of the guest list, the event schedule, and the social media hashtag they'd be using for photos. By the time this was over, Trevor and Melissa's carefully planned future would be as public as they'd made my humiliation. The difference was, my story would be true. The client appreciation event was being held at the Riverside Convention Center, one of those generic corporate venues, with floor-to-ceiling windows and overpriced catering. I arrived early, dressed in the one decent suit I owned, and positioned myself where I could observe without being immediately noticed. Trevor was working the room like a politician, shaking hands and making small talk with clients. He looked confident, successful, completely unaware that his world was about to implode. Melissa wasn't there yet. According to Linda, she was planning to arrive fashionably late and make an entrance. Linda had done her part perfectly. She'd arranged for Trevor's financial documents to be anonymously delivered to his business partner earlier that day, along with a detailed timeline of his affair. She'd also ensured that several key clients would receive some interesting information about Trevor's personal conduct and professional ethics. My job was simpler, but more dramatic. At exactly 8:30, Melissa made her entrance. She looked stunning in a black cocktail dress, her hair and makeup perfect, every inch the successful PR executive. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, accepting compliments and making connections. I watched her work the room for 20 minutes, building up to my moment. She was in the middle of a conversation with 3 potential clients when I approached. "Melissa," I said, loud enough for the nearby conversations to pause. "I've been looking for you." She turned, and I saw the exact moment she realized I was there. Her professional smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. "Nate," she said carefully, "what are you doing here? I wanted to congratulate you on your new relationship with Trevor. I think people should know how happy you two are together." The conversations around us had stopped entirely. Trevor, who'd been across the room, started moving in our direction, but the crowd was thick and he couldn't move quickly without causing a scene. "I don't know what you're talking about," Melissa said, but her voice was tight. "Really? Because I have photos of you two from last night, and text messages, and hotel receipts going back 6 months." I pulled out my phone and showed her one of Linda's screenshots, a message from her to Trevor discussing their weekend plans. "You're making a scene," she hissed. "Am I? I thought I was just sharing good news with your colleagues." By now, we had an audience. Phone cameras were starting to appear, and I could see people whispering to each other. In the social media age, nothing stayed private for long. Trevor finally reached us, slightly out of breath and trying to look casual. "Hey, Nate," he said, as if we were old friends. "Didn't expect to see you here. I bet you didn't. How's Linda, by the way? She's been asking about you." Trevor's face went white. "What? Your wife, Linda. Remember her? She's been very helpful in documenting your relationship with my wife. Very thorough record keeper, your Linda." The crowd around us was growing larger, and I could see phones recording. This was exactly what I'd hoped for. A public revelation that couldn't be controlled or spun. "This is inappropriate," Melissa said, trying to regain control. "You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm embarrassing myself?" I looked around at the crowd of her colleagues and clients. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Melissa Callahan, my wife of 5 years, and Trevor Gold, her boss and lover for the past 8 months. The reaction was immediate and electric. Gasps, murmurs, and the unmistakable sound of social media notifications as people started posting in real time. "They've been planning to divorce their respective spouses and go public with their relationship," I continued. "But they wanted to control the narrative first. Make sure everyone knew that their marriages ended before their affair began." Trevor tried to interrupt. "This is slander." "It's truth," I said, pulling out more screenshots. "Would you like me to read some of your text messages? The ones where you call your wife weak? Or the ones where you and Melissa laugh about how clueless your spouses are?" Melissa grabbed my arm. "Stop this. Right now. Why? You've been telling our story publicly for months. I'm just adding some missing details." I turned back to the crowd, which now included several people I recognized as local business reporters and social media influencers. "For 6 months, my wife has been building a case against me online. Subtle posts about feeling unappreciated, hints about emotional neglect, carefully crafted messages about outgrowing relationships. She's been preparing you all to see me as the villain in our divorce story." I showed them Melissa's draft Instagram post, the one she'd planned to publish after filing papers. "But the truth is simpler. She's been having an affair with her boss, planning to leave me for him, and trying to manipulate public opinion so she'd look like the victim instead of the cheater." The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Phones were recording from multiple angles, and I could see the event's official photographer capturing everything. "Trevor," I said, turning to face him directly, "your business partner received some interesting documents today. Financial records showing you're about 2 months away from bankruptcy. Loan documents for that BMW you can't actually afford. Credit card statements that would make a lottery winner nervous." Trevor looked like he was going to be sick. "And Melissa," I continued, "your followers are going to be so interested in the real story behind all those inspirational posts about authenticity and living your truth." Melissa was shaking with rage. "You bastard, you planned this." "I learned from the best," I said. You taught me how powerful public narrative can be. I'm just better at it than you are. The crowd began to disperse, people pulling out phones to call friends, post updates, and share the drama they'd just witnessed. Within minutes, hashtags were trending, videos were being uploaded, and the story was spreading beyond the convention center. Trevor tried one last desperate move. "This is harassment. I'm calling security." "Go ahead," I said. "I'm sure they'd love to hear about how you've been embezzling company funds to pay for your affair." That was a bluff. I didn't have evidence of embezzlement, but Trevor's reaction told me I'd hit close to something real. Linda appeared at my shoulder, seemingly from nowhere. "Hello, darling," she said to Trevor. "Enjoying your party?" Trevor looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Linda, what are you doing here?" "Supporting my new friend Nate," she said. "We've become quite close while you and Melissa were planning your future together." The final humiliation was watching Trevor and Melissa try to salvage something from the wreckage. They attempted damage control, spinning stories about misunderstandings and taken out of context messages, but the evidence was too overwhelming, the public revelation too complete.
Bye.